Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting for June 27. I'll call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Councillor Sands gives his regrets for this evening. Starting with the land acknowledgement. Blackfalds Town Council acknowledges that we are on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting ground, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. Item 3.1, the agenda for this evening. Administration, any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Your Worship. Can we add 14.2 under section 21 and 14.3 under section 25?
Thank you. Council, any additions or changes? Councillor Pell.
Thank you so much. I have one more to add. So it would be item 14.4, section 18. Thank you.
Councillor Schwab.
Under action correspondence 8.3, Lacombe Parade Daze.
Okay. And seeing no other additions, can I get a motion to adopt the amended agenda? Deputy Mayor Dennis.
I so move as amended.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. That's not unanimous. We have no delegation this evening, no public hearing. There's no business arising from the minutes. Our first item of business, 7.1, the CAO report.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I do have the CAO report for June 2023. Myself and other administrative team members have had several meetings with the county regarding joint servicing and the water reservoir upgrades. An EdTech member and I toured around the potential EDO around the town in early June, and that will be that position was successfully accepted, and they will be starting after the July long weekend. Hosted and attended the IDP ICF meeting with Lacombe County. Attended and assisted in the Blackfalds Daze pancake breakfast with council, and we're finalising discussions with Blackfalds Estate with the expropriation with legal. Under corporate services, finance and admin, on June 5th, corporate services coordinated the tax assessment information session. Appointments were scheduled from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. that allowed citizens to discuss specifics of their property assessment with our contract property assessor. In the weeks before these assessment sessions, the tax notices and the tax assessor addressed an average of 5 phone calls a day since notices were sent out. As you're aware, the new corporate credit cards and corporate fuel cards have been issued to all cardholders. Setup and training systems are completed. Council will get their training very soon. And the process currently transitioning to the new online coding process from the paper reports that we have been doing. This month, under finance, we finalised the library annual return to the province, reported to the K Division on the 2022 operating and maintenance for the RCMP building, created the Municipal Measurement Information Report to Council, and we're currently reviewing the travel and subsistence policy, working with a committee on the purchasing policy and procedures, and establishing the capital planning meetings with directors. Under the IT and records management, IT is taking proactive measures to enhance security awareness and improve technical skills of staff members. They're conducting phishing campaigns as part of security training as an effective way to educate employees about the dangers of phishing attacks and teach them how to identify and respond to suspicious emails and messages. These initiatives aim to empower our staff with the knowledge and skills needed to protect themselves and the organisation from cyber threats. By combining phishing campaigns with relevant IT tips, we can effectively enhance the workforce's security awareness and technical skills. IT is implementing a structured, secure, tailored approach to specific department needs and requirements of the organisation for the audio and visual and picture files. Retaining and securing our data with multi-factor authentication, encryption, mirrored replication, on-site and off-site backup retentions for redundancy and failover. Continuing to follow the 3-2-1 golden backup rule, which is 3 copies of data, including production, 2 different off-site storage backups, and 1 off-site backup. Records management has been involved in various tasks relating to policy development, records management, and software implementation aimed at streamlining processes as well as improving accessibility and records and retention of those records. Marketing and communications, wayfinding, still continuing to work on the wayfinding design files. Maps are being updated, including the new Catholic school site, as well as waiting for possible sponsorship titles. File organization, with the help from IT, they're going through all the photos and deleting duplicates, as well as attempting to create more space and looking at those backups as well. They've been assisting HR with redesigning all the staff and management forms, and they assisted with the Blackfalds Daze, the organization and promotion of such event. Under infrastructure and property services, this section continues to work with the Red Deer Catholic School Board and the Aspen Lake West developers to move the new school development forward, and the resubmission of McKay Ranch Consolidated Area Structure Plan and proposed amendments have been provided and currently undergoing internal review. Copies of permit requests have increased as many lending institutions now require proof that appropriate permits have been pulled. Bylaw amendments to the SDAB, Animal Control Bylaw, and the introduction of the Urban Head Bylaw were also drafted and reviewed this month. The Lauren Avenue Rehabilitation project is underway, sending construction notices to residents. All construction activities, including landscaping, asphalt removal, and replacement concrete works, will start July 3rd and be completed by August 18th. Public Works will be replacing any CC valves that are non-operable in that time. The department is in the process of utilizing FCM's readiness scale to strategically map its path forward to grow its asset management practices for Blackfalds in conjunction with the asset management strategy to be completed as part of a capital project. This roadmap will set the specific objectives to advance asset management for Blackfalds. Public Works has completed crack sealing as per the pavement management study recommendations, and will be a study recommendation. It will be completing spray patching and cut and replacing soon. The department is now focusing on roadway painting, signage, and pothole repair. The director and the mayor attended the Battle River Watershed Annual General Meeting on June 12th at Battle Lake, the headwaters of the watershed, and an event was well intended and informative. The department has been busy with the development of capital project reviews, including Womack's extension, McKay Ranch, EV charging stations, water system skater mitigation, Lacombe County sanitary improvements, and future transfer station upgrades. Under community services, under the Abbey Centre, capital projects for the installation of the Blackfalds Fieldhouse Society fundraising stone and picnic tables have been completed, along with the additional bench installed just outside of the Abbey doors. The Abbey's first ever summer pass was successful and had sales of 194 passes, which includes 366 people sold in 2 weeks. The pool deck lifting RFP has been awarded to Polylevel Alberta Corp, and that work will commence after the pool season in mid-September. During Blackfalds Days, the Abbey Centre hosted the Arm Wrestling Championship, Toonie Swim, non-denominational church service, with the general managers, guest services team lead, and children's services programmer, supporting the pancake breakfast, parade marshalling, Red Deer Royals lunch, and kids zone. Under projects, the Border Paving Plaza is making progress as the cement pad is there, and the project, the cement pad for the project has been completed. Currently, Border is working on installation of the trail connection. Additionally, Ben Hurd's group is in the process of creating the decorative wall, which is scheduled to be installed mid-July. Under events, Blackfalds Days proved to be a great success for the community, featuring 2 new events, the Global FMX Motocross and the Arm Wrestling Championships. These events attracted large crowds who enthusiastically participated and enjoyed the entertainment. The pancake breakfast was well attended and raised $1,700 for the food bank. The parade drew a massive crowd along Broadway Avenue, Waghorn Street. After the parade, the farmers market featured 100 vendors and saw incredible turnout. Witnessing such strong community engagement, and the other events were also well received. It was wonderful. Eagle Builder Centre, the Great Benjamin Circus is putting on the show, 2 shows on June 27th, and the Gord Bamford Foundation Gala took place on June 22nd. FCSS Seniors Week, June 6th to 11th, saw 16 different activities, programs, and events offered for our vibrant residents, partnerships with the Abbey Centre, Blackfalds Youth Crew, Beyond Food Community Hub, Kids Connection, Blackfalds Service Credit Union Public Library, Chimo Club, Alberta Health Services, and the Bulldogs had 379 unique participants. Blackfalds Daze saw the involvement of 71 volunteer shifts, totaling 185.5 hours of donated work. The June Youth Advisory Coalition meeting had 23 in attendance, with the presentation from the Samson Cree Chief Saddleback for the formation of their hub. Under Parks and Facilities assisted, staff assisted with the setup and pull down of several Blackfalds events. Staff attended to barricades for the parade and were on hand at the meeting events throughout the weekend for general cleaning and supervision. Minor sports organisation, which is lacrosse, baseball and soccer, are wrapping up for the season, and the Parks team has been busy keeping up with the Parks task to keep the community beautiful, hanging baskets, flower beds, large planters, mowing, trimming, bike school, park maintenance, and cleaning up graffiti. Economic development, like I mentioned, the interviews were conducted with our new economic development officer, Rick Sadek, starting July 4th. And the EV charging stations have been ordered and installation is due in the fall. Enforcement services. Under emergency management, Lacombe County Mutual Aid Partners met on June 15th. This meeting was conducted at the Alta gas site, allowing members to have a tour of the facility. Going forward, these meetings will continue to be held at our industry partner sites to ensure all partners have an awareness of the challenges face in their day-to-day operations. June 15th, the subcommittee met to discuss training plans. It was decided that ICS 200 course will be put on in the fall, utilizing our own trainers, allowing for all partners to be able to send staff to this course. Municipal enforcement. So the bike rodeo unfortunately had to be cancelled due to the rain over the past 2 weeks. These will be reorganised for early fall when school comes back in for the year. Officers have been very proactive during the month, with 112 violation ticks being issued. 2 check stop operations have been conducted with assistance from the RCMP as well, time permitting. These checks have proven to be very successful, allowing officers to remove some unsafe vehicles and trailers. Focus has been on the community standards of bylaw, with summer upon us, ensuring residents and businesses are maintaining their properties to a level expected. The replacement vehicle for the Ford Taurus, the Marquee Mustang, has been built and it's on transportation on its way to be delivered. It's expected to arrive mid-July. This vehicle will then go to Calgary, where it will be fitted with emergency equipment, deckling required for use. The charging plug will be installed at the Municipal Enforcement Bay, coming soon. Under fire, the new fire engine build is coming along well. The forecast completion for final inspection at Fort Garry, Winnipeg, is expected the 3rd week of July. Secants have been purchased for training purposes and be placed at the old Public Works site. Doors and windows have been cut in and welded in preparation. The secants for burning will be the next step going forward. The department is excited for completion of this training aid. The NFPA 1001 Level 1 course is wrapping up, with final exams being done on June 24th and 25th. Under occupational health and safety, focus has been on finishing up the placement of the new first aid kits throughout the departments and facilities, with some having been missed in the initial order. These have been now ordered in full compliance of the new regulations. Joint health and safety meetings were held June 20th. Discussions was had on items which were identified in the core audit. We still have several items needing to be addressed. As time permits, these will be completed. Under RCMP, during the month of June, the RCMP Blackfalds had 2 officers second to the wildfires. The SRO has been working in collaboration with municipal enforcement on issues arising with some youth at in-town facilities. The RCMP SRO will be working with the Child Advocacy Centre during the summer while school's out. This will provide our SRO with the valuable experience to help build his contact list and assist him in these type of investigations. And that is the CAO report.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to accept CAO report? Councillor Swap.
I'll move to accept the CAO report as information.
Thank you. All in favor? Item 7.2, request for decision on bylaw 1284.23, the subdivision authority bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor Hoover, members of council. The Town Subdivision Authority bylaw is currently numbered 86700, and it establishes the authority that accepts, processes, and renders decisions on subdivision applications. Since its adoption back in 2000, there have been updates to governing legislation, appeal bodies, and town bylaws, which has necessitated an update to it. The updated Subdivision Authority Bylaw 128423 before council this evening contains the following amendments from the 2000 bylaw. It updates references to the newer version of the Municipal Government Act and the regulations pertaining to the subdivision of land. It updates references to the provincial appeal body from the Municipal Government Board to the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. It updates references to the local appeal body from the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board to the newly joined Intermunicipal Regional Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. And it updates the bylaw that establishes the office of the Chief Administrative Officer. This bylaw was presented to the Standing Committee of Council, where the motion was to recommend to Council to adopt bylaw 128423 was carried unanimously. Administration's recommendation before Council this evening is a 4-point recommendation. The first being that Council give first reading to bylaw 128423 Subdivision Authority bylaw as presented. Second is Council give second reading to bylaw 128423 Subdivision Authority bylaw as presented. Third, that Council give unanimous consent for third reading and final reading of bylaw 128423 Subdivision Authority bylaw as presented. And finally, that Council give third and final reading to bylaw 128423 Subdivision Authority bylaw as presented. I'm here for any questions.
Just a couple of brief ones from me. So I don't recall seeing minutes from this. Is this something that we've had any council meetings that included issues that this committee would have dealt with, or would they have been integrated into our normal minutes?
So Council is the subdivision authority. So whenever we have a subdivision application, planning and development does process that and then brings a recommendation forward to Council. And then those minutes from that subdivision authority decision are reflected in the regular Council
That's
meetings.
what that was my question, because
Okay.
I don't recall seeing separate minutes, and it just the way that it read, it looked like it had separate minutes for those proceedings, and I don't recall ever seeing anything separate. So.
No, I believe
Yeah.
they've always been just in the Council.
And then, of
minutes.
course, not of course, but that it mentions the CAO delegation. Do we currently have any of the authorities from this bylaw delegated to the CAO currently through the CAO? Do we know?
Not that I don't think so. No, from my understanding, the planning and development manager has been delegated the acceptance, the processing, and then the presentation to Council.
Okay, so yeah, because it was the next question, because I know it says in there that the CEO has the ability to further delegate those authorities. So, and the reason I'm asking is I was just wondering, is that in perpetuity? Is that or is that something that has to be reconsidered with a different CAO? So this is a delegated authority. I don't think since anyone on this council has sat, we've discussed that or made any changes to that. So I don't know that stops us, but
I don't foresee that changing with the new CAO coming in. There may be a need, and we need to speak about this administratively, of doing a delegation bylaw to make it more clear who is delegated which powers under each of these separate bylaws. But I think that's really up to the CAO in power.
okay, yeah, I don't think. I didn't imagine that it would change this particular bylaw, but I think that it just raised that question in my mind as to whether it's something that we need to consider with a new CAO coming on board in the coming weeks, whether or not that delegation is particular to that CAO, and whether it needs to be any duties or authorities that are delegated need to be reconsidered at that point. But fair statement that it's probably something that we should consider as a whole, what things are being delegated.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions other than mine? Seeing none, we do have the 4 administrative recommendations. Councillor Pell.
Thank you. I move council give first reading to bylaw 1284.23 subdivision authority bylaw as presented.
Any debate or discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Second reading. Councillor Schwab.
I'll move that council give second reading to bylaw 1284.23 subdivision authority bylaw as presented.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? Second reading unanimous. Looking for unanimous consent to move to third reading. Councillor Coulter.
I move that council gives amnesty that consent to third reading and final reading of bylaw 1284.23 subdivision authority bylaw as presented.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? Moving to third reading. Councillor Stendy.
I'll move that council give third and final reading to bylaw 1284.23 subdivision authority bylaw as presented.
Thank you. Debate or discussion on that final motion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, 7.3, request for decision bylaw 1286.23, the urban hen bylaw, first reading.
Members of council, at the May 23rd council meeting, a motion directing administration to bring forth an urban hen bylaw with rules and regulations in preparation for a 2-year. At the May 23rd council meeting, a motion directing administration to bring forth an urban hen bylaw with rules and regulations in preparation for a 2-year urban hen pilot program and bring it back to council for authorization was carried unanimously. This motion was in response to a recent public engagement survey that solicited the community's desire for a 2-year pilot program to allow urban hens that clearly showed the majority of Blackfalds residents were in favor of such a program. Administration is now bringing forward bylaw 1286.23 urban hen bylaw before council this evening for consideration of first reading. The highlights of the bylaw before you are that the pilot program is only in effect for 2 years. It would be effective July 11th, and the urban hen license is only valid from July 11th to July 10th the following year. So the applications would need to be applied every year, and the annual fee would be $70 and not prorated. A component of the application process requires notification to neighbors with shared property boundaries, but not those across the lane, as I stated in the report. There's also a small mistake in that comparison table, which I'll speak to later. So the adjacent landowners are only those with shared boundaries, unless it's a corner lot. That's when the person across the lane may be consulted. So when applicants come in to apply for their urban hen license, I got weird. The applicants would be required to sign a statutory declaration declaring that neighbors have been notified of the applicant's intent to apply, which must be signed at the time of application. The bylaw also has a complete prohibition on roosters. And although we have no limits on the number of hens, we are proposing a maximum coop size and maximum coop area per hen, which is consistent with research municipalities, which will naturally limit the number of hens. Appeal provisions have been built in, allowing appeals by the applicant and notified neighbors. Provisions to ensure that the hens' basic health and well-being are looked after. There is a prohibition on selling eggs, meat, slaughtering hens on the property, and keeping hens in anything other than a coop. Initial complaints would be the responsibility of the hen owner to rectify, and if that's not possible, the matter is to be brought to the town's attention. And municipal enforcement mechanisms and general penalties for contravening the bylaw have been built in. As I alluded to, there are 2 minor mistakes in the regulation comparison chart that was provided in the second attachment that I wish to bring to council's attention. The first is that the bylaw does not consider adjoining neighbors as those properties across the lane, which I just spoke to, as stated under the notification of neighbors / distance column. The second is that the pilot program is proposed to be in effect of July 11th, not July 1st. My apologies for those oversights. We will fix those when we bring this back. The administration recommendation before you is that council give first reading to bylaw 1286.23 urban hen bylaw as presented. Thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Councillor Pell.
Thank you so much. Through the chair. So thank you very much for bringing this forward and for all the work that's gone into this. So just for a point of clarification then as to the one error that you brought forward here. So now the notification area will just be only to adjoining property owners. So the majority of homes will have two. Then correct? If you assume they have a house on either side of them,
Through the mayor, that is correct.
right?
Yeah,
Okay, so not across the street and not across the lane.
that is correct.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that. So with that then, because we had earlier, initially, I guess we had discussed a larger area, a larger sample of homes. And that's sort of where that 75% number came from. So in thinking that the majority of applicants will only have two people, I'd be in favor of lowering that to 50%, because otherwise there's really
The math doesn't cut it.
the math doesn't math. Thank you very much.
Through the mayor, thank you for drawing that to our attention, because that 75% is a carryover from that 150-meter buffer. You are correct. And the reason why administration is proposing to lessen that was through our research with municipalities that have brought in this program as a pilot program at first, and then instituted it as a full-fledged program. They found that the only impacts are with adjoining neighbors, and that doing any circulation beyond that doesn't really make sense from that kind of perspective.
Right.
So my apologies for not amending that 75%.
Nope, that's perfectly fine. I'm happy that we're talking about it now, because that was my comment when I was reading through it. I thought, well, it doesn't math anymore. And then I have one other comment as well. So when we're talking about the minimum numbers of hens, so while I appreciate what you're saying that are the maximum size for the coop and the minimum amount of space per hen will already naturally limit that to 4. I don't think it hurts to put in there that it's a maximum of 4. It doesn't hurt, and then people don't have to math themselves, and then it just puts it in there because we already know that it has a limit. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of my questions was about the same thing that Councillor Pell asked for slightly different reasons, which was that 75% after thinking about this for a while. My concern in this is creating a situation where there's rivalry or feuds between neighbors, because we're now asking someone to go and negotiate essentially with their neighbors. And we have no other process that asks our residents to do this, including with the residential kennel bylaw, which in my mind is probably a bigger issue and probably a bigger annoyance to more people as dogs. I don't know. This is a pilot program, so I guess one of the comments that Councillor Pell said, thank you for all the work. It's a lot of work, especially for a pilot program to create this from scratch. I don't anticipate from different municipalities that I've talked to with this, I don't anticipate that we're going to have major problems with it. And I think we're being really, really cautious going into this. But I suspect that people that have big, loud dogs probably get way more complaints than anybody that's going to have an urban hen coop in their yard. And we're not asking those people to go through that type of process. You know, we do allow it. It's through a development permit. It goes to MPC. MPC looks at the situation, most likely makes a decision, even with objections from neighboring affected neighbors. I'm after thinking about this, I wonder if it's even necessary for us to ask the resident to go out and seek this process, because I know if I don't like a neighbor, I'm not going to use that example. I don't want to start throwing it out. I suspect there's probably people that have neighbors that they don't like, or they don't like them, and there could be people just to spite them. And as Councillor Appel pointed out, it just takes one. You know, even if we're asking 3 or 4, and it was 75%, it's going to be quite challenging for some of the people. And I just fear that we're going to put people in a situation where there's unnecessary feuds when we could just as easily make an approval based on the size of the yard, and we can weigh the decisions and weigh objections if we're going out for notifications. So I wonder if it's unreasonable to ask someone to go and do this when we're not asking someone that's going out for a residential kennel license. And I know that we're making a slight change to that, which will make it less likely that we'll have those. But I have sat on NPC and we have considered a couple of residential kennel permits, and people have submitted objections, and we've gone ahead and submitted or we've approved it subject to conditions and follow-up of complaints. So I would suspect that we're going to have some people that are going to want one of these urban hen licenses that will not get the support. And what the other challenge is, what happens if the neighbors just simply don't get back to them? We're stating in this bylaw that they have to come back with positive and negative results. And if that neighbor decides that they don't even want to talk to them and don't respond, we're not even giving them the option to move forward with this license in absence of any objections. So that would be the only thing in this bylaw that I'm significantly concerned about, is creating fights between neighbors when we have the method to remedy this if there's complaints, or we have the ability to deny it. Lots of things in here that give the CAO or the delegated authority, probably to planning and development, to approve or to deny this license based on a number of different conditions that I feel like it's not even necessary to have neighbor approval. I don't know what the rest of council feels there. But that would be the one area that I would say strike that out entirely and just send it to NPC. And so that's a long comment. So the question associated with that would be the kennel licenses. I wasn't able to find a very clear process, certainly not as clear as this urban hen bylaw, in what the applicant needs to go through. It essentially says that they need to apply for it, and that's it. There's no breakdown of what they have to do.
So I'm going to speak to a couple of things. That one provision that we have in this proposed bylaw to try to deal with neighbor complaints by the hen owner first is unique. That isn't something that we saw in any of the other research municipalities. It was something that was brought forward at the May 23rd council meeting for discussion. So that's why we carried it into there. So I don't think anyone's going to be too upset if that's removed from there, because you're absolutely right. If there is any actual bylaw infringements, that should be dealt with our municipal bylaw folks who are well versed with dealing with those kind of matters. Sorry, your second one was whether or not these applications can go to. So the way that these applications are, what we're envisioning, we're working on some internal procedures right now to assist staff. So if this does get third and final reading, say at the July 11th meeting, we're ready to go the next day. There would be some internal departments that would be circulated to provide comments, that sort of stuff. But we're not looking at engaging with adjacent landowners. We are expecting that to be done in the forefront. I can see some concerns with that support and non-support. There are some unfortunate neighbor situations out there. So I think that might be something that we could look at, is possibly taking the onus off the applicant, and we do the circulations and vet the comments as we do with discretionary use applications. With respect to your comment about the kennel applications and the way that they're dealt with, kennels are a discretionary use in residential districts, for not all of them, only the larger lot ones that could accommodate that many dogs. And with the new land use bylaw, we're actually giving more powers to the development officers, and they can now deal with those applications unless they don't feel comfortable to do so. They always have the option to provide that onto the municipal planning commission. In terms of having a body like the Municipal Planning Commission dealing with urban hen licenses, the MPC bylaw is very specific that they're a development authority, and this is kind of it's kind of out there. It doesn't fit under the land use bylaw. It's not really a development authority function per se. Doesn't mean we can't do that. But I would question what then is the appeal mechanism. Now that with the Regional Subdivision and Development Appeal Board, they deal with development and subdivision appeals. This is a hen appeal. I don't know if we could pass that on to them. So that's why when we crafted this bylaw, we dealt with it as a separate approval entity just being the Planning and Development Department is ultimately where we foresee this happening. And then there is an appeal body that is established under there should there be any appeals. But there can definitely be tweaks to this. This is a draft bylaw. We're presenting it for first reading for some consideration. You know, if there are any other changes before second reading you'd like to see.
So with that, I mean, so the kennel permit or the kennel license is a discretionary use, and is that why the development officer will have the authority?
Yeah, so what we did with the new land use bylaw, it was the 2016 bylaw that we had. Every discretionary use went to the Municipal Planning Commission, and that was seen as a little bit much. We've got wonderful development officers that know how to do this, and a lot of these uses are, especially discretionary uses, they're fairly simple applications for the most part. So with the kennel applications, the development officers still go through the same process as if it's going to MPC. So there is a pre-circulation of applications to neighboring landowners. We take those comments, we consider them before we render a decision, and then there's also the ability for the neighbors to appeal, which we still built that neighbor appeal mechanism into this. But what we haven't built in is whether we provide notification to the neighbors that the hen license was in fact provided so that they would know how to appeal. So that is something that we can build into the procedures, or if council wishes, it can go right into the bylaw.
So that was a very detailed answer. The secondary part, no, that's fine. The secondary part would be then if this pilot program is successful and we decide that we're going to adopt this, I'm assuming that would become a discretionary use within our land use bylaw. Or I just wonder why there's the difference between dogs, cats, and now hens when they're both in the animal control.
I can see why there's a little bit of muddling here, because we just for council's information, there's amendments to the animal control bylaw after this, and so those two bylaws are speaking to each other. They both serve different functions. The land use bylaw is very specific to the Municipal Government Act controlling development on privately land or on separately titled properties, not road right-of-ways, that kind of stuff. The animal control bylaw is dealing with animals specifically. The reason why the land use bylaw is tinkering into the animal world is because kennels is a use of the land.
Okay, fair enough.
Does that make sense? So
I think so.
it becomes almost like a business, something that somebody needs to be cognizant of the impact of the neighbors and that sort of stuff.
Okay, so I see to Councillor Dennis or Deputy Mayor Dennis.
With this being a pilot project, like if we approved it the way it is, we have 2 years to see if it's successful or not. And if we have to amend it, we can amend it down the road.
Councillor Pell.
Thank you. Through the chair. So thank you for further explaining the licensing process and how we got to this specific portion for the notifications, because I did have another question about this, but since hearing our discussion and knowing that we are planning at least on leaving the licensing application at $70, which is on the higher end of other communities, but we did that specifically to ensure that we made, everything was going well. So with that, I would be happy to see the the adjoining neighbor notifications be sent from the Planning and Development Department and not by the resident themselves. I just think that in order to, as to what the mayor was alluding to before, this way it's not coming from the neighbor, it's coming from the town. And then their response comes directly from the town. We're sort of avoiding that middle person where, when you play telephone, how information can get lost and confused. I would feel comfortable doing that. I don't know everyone else's thoughts on that.
Thank you. And then my only other question is, if we don't do that, and when we go down to the appeals section here, 6.11, that allows for the appellant, the adjoining neighbor, to appeal, but it doesn't appear to allow the applicant to appeal if it's denied. So if we're going to have an appeal process, it should be available for either scenario for either the applicant or the neighbor that doesn't like the decision?
Just a point of clarification, that is section 6.1.3. That's where the, if there's a refusal of the urban hen license,
Okay,
the
so
appellant can
it's-
appeal that.
Okay, so that, my bad. I thought it was just the wording eluded me there. So, I mean, that would only be if, in my mind, necessary, if the applicant is actually going through that. I definitely support the idea that this comes from planning and development. Just as I'm reading this, firstly, the 75% jumped out at me. That might be challenging, even if there was 3 adjoining neighbors. It just takes one to squash this application, which further is going to exacerbate that neighborhood relationship. So I would prefer to see it come from planning and development. And honestly, I guess Deputy Mayor Dennis is correct. This is something we can adjust if need be, but I feel like MPC should be dealing with this, or a development officer. Really, it should be something that if they have the space, if they check all the boxes on their application, that they understand their requirements for it, even with a small amount of objection, as long as it's a reasonable scenario, then we should allow it. And if there's problems, we'll deal with that through bylaw. That would be my position. Councillor Stendy.
So knowing that you've read many other municipalities' bylaws at this point, do all of them include a requirement to get permission from the neighbors? Or are there some that
There's
do
just
not
2
require
on
permission
our list.
from neighbors?
There is, the town of Sylvan Lake and the city of Red Deer do not require notification to neighbors. The city of Lacombe does, town of Innisfail, town of Penhold. Village of Alex, town of Olds does it as we're talking about now in the village of Clive. So they really different on who provides that notification. It can,
Okay.
it's either the P&D department or the applicant.
So further to that then, the municipalities that do not require permission, have they had complaints? Has there been a ton of appeal from neighbors who are upset? Or has it really just not been an issue?
It was really surprising in speaking with these municipalities. There was some of them were very hesitant to bring in a pilot program like this. And they found once it got going, it really wasn't a big deal. And they haven't had the complaints. They haven't had the appeals. They haven't had all of the things that they thought, when they were kind of snowballing on all the what ifs, they haven't happened. So every municipality that we spoke to that brought this in as a pilot program has brought it into a full-fledged program.
Okay. So further to that, would administration see any issues or have any concerns should we choose to leave that step out and see how it goes? Because as Deputy Mayor noted, it is a pilot project, and should we note any concerns within the first year or 2, it's completely within our purview as council to introduce a new rule, should it be an issue. Does administration see any concerns should we choose to go that route?
I'll speak behalf on all of them. No.
Okay, perfect.
Because we feel that the bylaw has enough teeth to it that should there be any contraventions to it, we can act on that.
Wonderful. Perfect. Thank you. You've answered all my questions.
Thank you. And then looking at that list, there's, that's pretty obvious that we would really be punitive in terms of the minimum neighbor approval based on the other 10. There's only 2 of them that have it at all. And our closest neighbor that has it, and they've told me they have no problems with this. It's 50% minimum approval. And so us having anything more than that seems excessive. And there are people out there that'll look at this just as a pure challenge since they have, a direct say in it. So yeah, I'm glad. It seems like there's some consensus that maybe that's the direction we go. So this is first reading, so I mean, with that discussion, I don't see that, does administration feel that we need to address that change in a motion, or are we just going to make those adjustments and see this come back at second reading?
Yeah, to speak to that point, the procedural bylaw, section 141, states that council shall, for first reading, council shall vote on the motion of first reading of a bylaw without amendment or debate. So we can take those comments and bring it back for second reading with those changes.
Thank you, fair enough. And so any other discussions or comments before we make any motions? I'm sorry, Manager.
I just want to clarify something. So is the consideration to remove the neighbor notification altogether as well?
Well, I mean, so far there's only been 3 that have indicated that that would not be enough to make that change. That's just been discussion. So does anybody feel that that is not the direction that this bylaw should go? Councillor Stende?
Just through the chair, can you repeat that, please? Thank you.
Certainly can. So section 141 of the procedural bylaw, council shall vote on a motion for first reading of a bylaw without amendment or debate. So we can just take first reading as the motion is in the admin recommendation there, and then bring back any amendments for second or third reading.
Okay, which is fair. I'm not saying that we're having debate. I just want to make sure that it's not just 3 of us that are feeling there needs to be a change in this moving forward. Councillor Stende?
So hearing that, I'm prepared to move that council give first reading to bylaw 1286.23, urban hen law, and urban hen bylaw as presented. Pardon my tongue.
Thank you. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Item 7.4, request for decision on bylaw 1287.23, the animal control bylaw amendments.
Now, to allow for urban hens, an amendment to the animal control bylaw is required, as it currently prohibits livestock within the town's municipal limits, which currently includes chickens. Bylaw 1287.23 proposes to amend the definition of livestock to allow for licensed chickens. Since an amendment was already required to the animal control bylaw, administration took this opportunity to fix a long-standing inconsistency between the land use bylaw and the animal control bylaw when it comes to the number of dogs allowed before a kennel use must be applied for. The land use bylaw states that a kennel must be applied for to keep more than 3 dogs, and the animal control bylaw requires a kennel use to be applied for to keep more than 2 dogs. The amendment proposed under bylaw 1287.23 proposes to increase the number of dogs allowed before a kennel use must be applied for to 3 dogs to be in line with the land use bylaw requirements. The administrative recommendation before you is that council give first reading to bylaw 1287.23 animal control bylaw amendments as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Pell?
Thank you through the chair. So thank you very much for fixing that portion, as I know that kennel definition clarification has caused confusion in the past. I did only find one item in there that I just wanted to bring forward. It was just a typo. Part 3, section 6, the word aggressive has a 9 in it instead of a G.
Yeah, and what has happened, I just located a PDF version of this, and when I transferred it to Word, that's what happened, but I will definitely make sure of that. There's a couple of 9s in here.
Yeah, for sure.
you.
Just wanted to mention it. Thank you very much.
And I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this right. We are amending it to say that they wouldn't require a residential kennel permit for 3 dogs, but is that allowing more than 3 dogs? Because I think up until this point, even with the residential kennel permit, it was still a maximum of 3 dogs. So is this going to allow someone to come in and say, hey, I'm going to apply and get 4 or 5 dogs with the maximum number of animals being 6 between, right now it's a maximum number of animals are 6 between cats and dogs, as far as I'm interpreting this. So I'm just wondering if we are a little too vague in this, that somebody will expect to be able to get a residential kennel permit and have more than 3.
That is the purpose of a residential kennel, is to have more than 3. So they would have to apply through the land use bylaw, and we'd have to ensure that it is reasonable to allow that. So this amendment to the animal control bylaw is just aligning it with the land use bylaw requirements. So what it means is that you can have 3 dogs and 3 cats over the age of 3 months. And if you're going to have any other animals more than that, any more dogs or cats, then you need to come in and apply for a kennel use.
Yes, my question is to a maximum of how many dogs, because it doesn't state that. So if I were to read into this, it allows 6 animals. I might read into this saying, oh, I can have 6 dogs.
The land use bylaw is very clear. It comes down to 3 dogs and or 3 cats.
So then there's no purpose for a residential kennel permit then. If somebody can have 3 dogs without having a residential kennel license, the animal control bylaw is allowing 3 without any application.
That's correct.
So what is the purpose of the residential kennel license if you can't have more than 3?
You can have more than 3 if you apply for the kennel license. So if I've got 3 dogs and 3 cats and I'm bringing in 1 other dog, that triggers me to have to apply for that kennel use.
Okay, and that's kind of what I'm getting at is what is the maximum of dogs? Because before, the way it was written, it was a maximum of 3 dogs. It was 2, and you could get 3 dogs if you had a residential kennel permit. Now it's saying you can have 3 dogs as the animal as a standard. If you go beyond that, you need a residential kennel license, but it doesn't state how many dogs is the maximum. So we're going to say 4.
I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to council on that when I bring this back, because that's in the land use bylaw as the maximum.
I looked at it again in the land use bylaw today, and I thought it just referred back to the numbers that are in the animal control bylaw. But if we could, because I just want to make sure that we're clear that somebody isn't assuming that they can get 4, 5, 6 dogs. Now that we're allowing 3 as the without a kennel permit, if they're going to allow a kennel permit, I would like to see us stipulating what that maximum is. Councilor Pell.
Thank you. Okay, so then Mayor Hoover, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So, but that's having a kennel permit. I don't know that a necessary maximum makes sense unless it's a very high number. Because if the kennel permit is for people to either be housing other people's dogs, like kenneling dogs, or to be having litters of kennels, because sometimes you have puppies that are over 3 months that you still have. That's a kind of a throw in the air number. So
It's over 3 months though, right? So you can have
correct.
litters without having any impact to someone's.
provided you're able to sell all
Right.
your puppies by the age of 3 months, or that you want to, because there are people that want to keep them, right? So
Okay.
I think it might be tricky to put a final cap on that, but knowing that it does go through, an approval process, limits to a lot in a residential neighborhood versus limits to a lot closer on the edge of town that's a larger lot with more property around it is probably going to determine that, because I'm assuming that's a discretionary
It is.
item, right?
And I don't know if I'm interpreting your discussion as the difference between a residential kennel and a kennel, because kennel is a business. It's a permitted use. Residential kennel licenses allow someone to have more than, at this point, 2 dogs. If we amend this,
But-
sorry, maybe
Okay.
Director Warren was clarifying this. It sounds been out for a while.
Yeah, so I guess to clarify it, the land use bylaw, if you have more than 6 animals, you need to have a kennel license. And that just means you have more than 6 animals. It doesn't mean have a kennel business or anything else like that. So right now in the land use bylaw, it says that if you have more than 3 dogs and more than 3 cats, you need to have an animal kennel license. What we're doing is we're simply aligning the animal control bylaw to that. And in practice, we've always said we'll base it off of the land use bylaw, because when we brought forward the animal control bylaw and we noticed that there was this inconsistency, we went with the higher number. So it's not going to change anything that we're doing. It's only going to align policy and bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Again, it makes sense to me to allow the 3, because I think that we have been doing that for some time now. I just didn't understand where the residential kennel license fit into this now that the animal control bylaw allows 3 dogs. That to me was the whole purpose of that animal control, or the residential kennel license, was allow someone to have that 1 extra dog. Now that we're allowing that as part of the animal control bylaw, I'm not sure where the residential kennel license fits into this. So, Director Warren.
I guess I can speak on that for sure through the chair. So the ability to have more than 6 animals is going to be based upon what they plan on doing. So it's going to be based upon the area of the house and how many, other additional animals they can have on. So if it was just a simply, hey, I've got 7 animals, it'd be a quick run through the municipal planning commission or through the development office or whatever the use is. But if it was more than that, then that's where we'd start looking into, okay, well, how are you housing these animals and things along that line. So based upon the size of the additional dogs or cats would determine the impact on what would be required to have, say, 10 dogs versus 7 dogs. So I hope that clarified things.
Well, yes and no, because I don't think that the residential kennel is ever allowed more than 3. I think you're talking about a kennel license, which would be a business. So someone that's a breeder, someone that has some type of business associated to having extra dogs, just not a household that wants an extra dog as a pet.
Yeah, your worship. So that is true, but we treat a kennel license, regardless of whether it's one additional animal or a bunch of additional animals for a business, as the same sort of application. Is just the level of detail would be, of course, less for an extra dog versus 10 dogs. So it's the same process either way. And then the kennel would actually have to apply for a business license as a kennel business as well, outside of this bylaw.
Councillor Stendy?
So I actually do have a question about the amount of animals. The reason being is I'm wondering if consideration has ever been given to individuals who foster animals with the prevalence of rescues, especially in our area. We do have a lot of people in our community who foster 1 or 2 or 3 potential additional animals on top of the animals they currently have in their homes. And sometimes those fosters end up staying for a little longer than they expected and can potentially live with them for 6 months to a year before they're adopted. Has consideration ever been given to what the difference is between an animal that's being fostered and an animal that's a permanent resident? And how would we deal with that if, for example, a neighbor complained that somebody next door has 4 or 5 dogs, but 2 of them are fosters?
Through the chair, to the best of my knowledge, we've never considered regulating fostering. That would be a very difficult thing to enforce and to get permits because it is such a temporary use of it. So no consideration hasn't been given, but I would imagine if a complaint happens that somebody has additional animals, that's something that we would investigate and look at the longevity of having that animal there, and that may necessitate either undertaking enforcement that the additional animals are removed or requiring them to apply for this kennel use.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
And that's actually, Councillor Stendy brings up an example. That's one of the reasons why I ask and why I'm asking so many, because I know at least 2 people that foster that have that additional dog. And, they've asked me, am I going to get in trouble because I have 3 dogs? And the town is telling me that I can have 3, but the bylaw wasn't reflecting that. So I really do appreciate that we have corrected that, and we've corrected it in the favor of, what's, happening out there. It's kind of the de facto rule that we have given to residents that they could have 3 dogs. More than that, I suspect there's probably people out there that foster that just take their chances with it. But I think this is going to solve the problem or the concern that some people have. So I do appreciate that. And I'm sorry if I ask a lot of questions, because it's come to me a few times at the dog park, and I dug into this to try and understand what is the reason why we even need to have that residential kennel license. If I completely understand the kennel license for business and for that purpose, and there was no language that said there was a maximum, but the residential kennel license was. So I think we have solved most of the problem here. If questions come up, then we'll address it. But I certainly think this is the right direction. So any other questions before we consider the first reading? Someone like to make that motion? Councillor Swab.
I'll move that council give first reading to bylaw 1287.23, animal control bylaw amendments as presented.
Thank you. All in favor? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Item 7.5, the Highway 2A tree removal.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The administration is considering removing the group of trees located between Highway 2A and Parkwood Road south of Cottonwood Drive. The reason for removing the trees is to provide a nice, aesthetically pleasing treed corridor. The land is currently owned by Alberta Transportation, so we would have to get approval from them, and the cost to remove the trees would be on us. Tree removal would likely happen this fall. Plans which are included show the addition of 28 trees consisting of Colorado spruce, white spruce, and foothills ash. The cost to remove the trees is estimated at $2,500 to $3,500, and the cost to supply new trees is $14,000 to $15,000. The town of Blackfalds received notification from Wolf Creek School Division that the town is a beneficiary of a trust fund that was set up in the late 1990s. The Olive Freeman Trust Fund allocated around 20% of the interest to the town for beautification and landscape projects. The amount sitting in the trust fund is around $9,000. Additional funding would be drawn from the Land and Buildings Reserve for this project. So with that, we have a recommendation forward, and if you have any questions.
Councillor Stendy.
I have two questions. First, are these healthy trees that we're considering removing? And second, would we not be able to landscape around the trees, including the trees that are currently there, if they are healthy?
Yeah, I believe the trees are healthy, and we could landscape around them if that's council's decision. Our idea was that it would just kind of mimic the south corridor, so it'd be similar, right? So, but yeah, if that's the direction you guys want to go, that's great.
Councillor Schwab.
I just want to thank you for bringing this forward, because I've talked to a few business owners along that area for the past 3 or 4 years, and they've wanted those trees removed for visibility to their businesses. And I'm definitely in favor of removing those trees for them. Thank you.
Councillor Stendy.
So further to Councillor Swab's comment, I've heard similar things from our Economic Development Board and some of the business owners that sit on those. But my question is, if we're just replanting trees anyway, does that actually solve the problem? And then further to that, if we chose to leave those trees and saved the cost of removing them, how much would that save us that we could be spending on additional trees or foliage or whatever?
Yeah, the cost to remove the trees is, like I said, estimated between $2,500 and $3,500. So $500 per tree. You'd be looking at 5 to 7 trees additional. So,
Councillor Rappel.
Thank you. Through the chair. So yes, thank you for bringing this forward. I know just with that particular clump of trees, with the type of trees they are, they do get quite unsightly in the winter months. And I do believe that that's the idea behind having that particular clump of trees removed. And then the trees that you've listed here added in to, yeah, like you said, more better mimic the south part of Parkwood Road. Sorry. My only thought would be, if we don't remove all of those trees, but at least thinned them out quite a bit from that clump, then we're at least saving some of them, but not dealing with the unsightly dead clump of trees for 6 months, 6+ months of the year.
and yes, just to comment on that, there could be some additional charges if we have to work around other trees as opposed to just bulldozing them down, right? So there is that to consider as well.
Now, I will say, whenever there's discussion of taking out trees, I'm hesitant. I'm skeptical. I think, and I have taken criticism from our residents that I hate trees, apparently, that whenever we take out a tree, you know how it goes, I get credit for good things and blame for other things. So there is a little bit of controversy when it comes to removing trees. So somewhat my first response is similar to Councillor Stendy, is that if we have healthy trees, why would we be taking them out? That said, a couple of things. I went out and I took my bicycle out and rode up and down the highway just so I could get a better sense of, I've seen those trees many times driving, but never really paid attention to the sight lines. And it's pretty clear that those things obstruct a lot of the visibility to those businesses driving down that highway. So I can understand from that perspective, it makes sense. And then after thinking about this is an ecosystem that, why do we take out ecosystems? But it's also 6 feet, 8 feet or so from the road, which I'm not sure that we want to encourage dense bush right beside a highway where, deers could come darting out in front of cars potentially. I'm not saying that happens right now, but it's not an ideal place for an ecosystem, a natural ecosystem. So in that respect, I think it's a little bit easier for me to understand the need to take these out. If in other places, I'm going to likely question taking out trees unnecessarily. In this case, it does make a little more sense to me than other places. And it does absolutely impact the sight lines to businesses, to people driving down that highway. And I know that's not the only reason why we, they're not the only things that we're supporting in the business, but it's the only place along there that we have trees, and it blocks them fairly drastically. And I would have liked the idea of thinning it out. I thought about that too. I kind of looked at it different angles. If we take out the back half, maybe it's either way, it impacts the sight lines there. So not generally in favor of taking out healthy trees and spending money to plant, but I think controlled landscaping is going to be better for that particular area for the town. So I do in this case support it. Councillor Stendy.
So the Wolf Creek School Division are the ones that let us know that we are the beneficiary of this trust fund, correct? Is there any stipulations that it's spent at our schools or around our schools?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Stendy. The way the trust fund was written was 20% of the interest went to the town of Blackfalds for project beautification landscaping, 20% went to the school division. And the trust fund stipulated that the funds going back to the school, it was written in the way that if there was to be a new school built, the swimming pool would be funded from that grant. However, the grant amount was only $100,000. So they're in the process of disbanding the trust fund because the intent of the trust won't come to fruition. So they're working with legal at the moment to disband that trust. So they've given us our interest payment, what we're eligible for, but generally 80% of that the trust funds go back to the school division, and the school division has indicated that they may put it towards the high school gym equipment. But it's unofficial at the moment, but they are disbanding the trust and using the funds on the school. The 80%.
Councillor Dennis, or Deputy Mayor Dennis.
Some of the history on that, Olive Freeman and her husband were principal and librarian of the school, and they donated that money, and it supplied swimming lessons through the summer programs. In the 90s, I volunteered, drove kids from town to the Seventh-day Adventist pool there. And then they did swimming lessons through the school too, from that fund.
Councillor Coulter.
Through the chair, just a question in regards to, I'm just looking at a satellite view of going right from Park Street down to Cottonwood. And so are we looking at eventually removing those spruce tree along there as well? Like between Parkwood and, what is that road? Sorry. Panama Drive? Because some of them are getting taller too, right?
Sorry, I'm just trying to see where exactly you're talking about. Sorry.
Highway
Panorama and Parkwood?
Park Street. Yeah, like running along Parkwood Road. The south side between
Like where we have 2 trees already kind of in that spot, is that what you're saying? Kind of just in front of the A&W? On the-
No, wrong side. Go to the south.
Nothing to the south.
There's no trees that run along the highway there?
There are trees that go south of Panorama Drive along the corridor, yes, but we're not talking about those trees at all. If that's
No,
what-
but what I'm asking, eventually are we going to be looking at taking those out as well? Because
No.
there's a clump in there too, so
Not that I'm aware of, no.
thank you.
Those were, I think those were the ones that were planted by the town, correct, in that development? So that
I'm
would
not
be
sure.
something that we would probably, we're not looking at that particular species, but we're looking at landscaping with smaller trees spread out a little bit, would be my understanding in this. So I guess one other further question is, since part of this, or a lot of this drive is coming from business owners along that corridor along Park Street, or Parkwood, and planting new trees is an expense, are there any offsite levies that would cover any of that cost? I see you shaking heads.
Through the chair, your worship, no, our offset levies cover road repairs or road improvements, water, sewer. There is no parks or facilities levies at this time. There is a recreation contribution, but that's only for residential lots.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I have no more questions. Does anyone else have questions or comments? Seeing none, we do have administrative recommendation. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Through the chair to administration, so I have a question regarding the recommendation. Just regarding, so the recommendation quotes $18,500, but knowing that we have approximate monies, $9,000 that are usable for this, would it be fair if the recommendation was to have a maximum of, say, $10,000? Knowing that we're utilizing those grant funds?
Yeah, we could change the motion to an upset limit of $10,000 from the Land and Buildings Reserve if you'd.
And that would cover it. That would be acceptable by administration.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think what we're looking for here is not so much the funding source, but approval of the maximum that we could spend. We could indicate that the funding sources were coming from 2 different sources. However, if we get audited, as we do, they'll look for a motion to approve the expenses up to $18,500, regardless of what the funding sources are.
Councillor Pell.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Knowing that, then I would like to move council approves the Highway 2A tree beautification project for the maximum amount of $18,500.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? Deputy Mayor Dennis.
I would like to see the existing trees stay. And we could add some trees to that, but getting rid of a lot of trees in our town is not my goal.
Thank you. Still open for debate? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor? All opposed? And that is just carried.
Thank you.
Councillor Stendy.
Through the chair to administration, if it is a vote of 3-3, is it actually carried?
Oh, no, that's right. So that would be a point of order, which you are correct. I counted 3 opposed, but we are down a councillor, so that is defeated. Okay, 7.6, request for decision, sanitary trunk, 2023 capital project request.
Thank you, Worship Council. So the County of Lacombe approached the town late in 2022 to discuss the limits of the existing water and sewer servicing for the Aspenland industrial area directly west of here. So the county is seeking additional water and wastewater supply as there is a large county water and wastewater user plan to develop in this area. Basically, the water capacity of our existing system is able to handle the larger demand in the interim until we can build the Broadway Reservoir. However, right now the pinch point is the limitations on the sanitary trunk. The joint economic servicing area wastewater flows have been quite low to date and have been accommodated with the town of Blackfalds by the Briarwood lift station. So basically there's a sewer line that runs down Vista Trail and then along South Street. And then at South Street across from the dog park, that wastewater diverts and goes north into the Briarwood lift station and then is pumped uphill into the downtown sanitary system where it continues on through treatment. Obviously that smaller line going north would need to be upgraded for the county to be able to utilize a little bit more of our system demands. So what we're asking tonight is that a sanitary trunk project be moved forward. This would include deep drilling or augering under the CP rail line at South Street north of the dog park, and then installation of a large sanitary trunk of approximately 750 meters. And that would go down from the dog park down through the Blackfalds Crossing development and east just south of the new Shoppers Drug Mart there where it would tie in. The trunk was planned to be built by the developer in the long-term future when they required the trunk for servicing. And the town was planning to pay for the deepening and upsizing of that trunk through offsite levies bylaws. We were anticipating the need for the larger capacity sooner now that this county developer is at the door. So during our initial discussions with the county, a preliminary budget of $2.65 million was estimated for this project, and it's based on previously built costs incurred in the area. However, there's limited information on the type of drill required for the rail crossing, local groundwater, soil conditions, etc. So Stantec, in collaboration with the county and ourselves, have completed 2 memos to help frame this discussion. Their best bet to move forward with the sanitary demands in the county area is to move forward to work together with the town to design, build, and connect the sanitary trunk system. Recently, we met with the county and are confident that the partnership agreement to share this project cost can be drafted and signed before the July 11th meeting if our council chose to support this initiative. As noted above, by building this trunk now will allow the county to continue to expand the Aspenland industrial area, as well as it will pre-build the sanitary servicing area to the north of the All-Star Park and that area, so that will save on future inflation costs and limit potential service interruptions or the potential flooding of that Briarwood lift station. So what we're asking tonight is that council amend the 2023 capital budget to include $2.65 million for the Northeast 22, 39, 27 west of the Forest Sanitary Trunk Project. And further, that the county instructs administration to negotiate with the county towards completing the project cost sharing agreement based off a ratio of 48% to 52%. The county would pay 48% of the line, the town would pay 52% of the line, and then about half of that would be recovered in offsite levies, future offsite levies. So with that, I'll open up to any questions, and I guess further to that, the time frame for this project to be constructed and connected would be the fall of 2024. So very tight time frames.
Questions, comments? So thank you for that. I know this came at us a little quicker than we're usually receiving capital requests. I think we've had fairly thorough conversation about this, and in my estimation, this is essentially self-funding with, you know, the revenue that we get through that Asplin development and the potential savings I think that might come with some of the water fees, wastewater fees that may change. But I'm confident that getting this done in today's dollars is probably going to work well for our community. So certainly see that it fits in terms of our long-term capital. Any other questions or comments before we move the motion or an alternate? Councillor Pell?
Thank you. I do have one through the chair to administration, and I'm sure it's just something I'm missing, but in the Stantec memo on the last page, so it's page 58 of our agenda package, there's a summary table of water and wastewater utilization. And for the town of Blackfalds, the water volume per day is less than the wastewater volume per day. And I just don't understand how we could have more going out than we have going in when the Lacombe County one is more volume and less wastewater.
So that's based off of the design guidelines that set the water demand rates. So your water demand rates in the system are normally sized for, say, 300 liters per second per capita per day, whereas we're probably only using, say, 270, and it's because we basically don't have that commercial and industrial high water users to, I guess, take that allocation in. But as we grow, we have to make sure that our designed water flows can provide that capacity should we get more water users.
Gotcha. Okay, so thank you for that. So then this table is just showing us what our capacities are. This isn't any sort of actuals.
Correct.
This is just, okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much for, I knew you'd be able to clear that up for me.
Any other questions? So we do have two recommendations. Councillor Stendy.
I'll move that council amend the 2023 capital budget to include 2.65 million for the Northeast 22, 39, 27 west of the 4th sanitary trunk project.
Thank you. Discussion or debate? All in favor? Yes. Councillor Pell.
Thank you. I move council instructs administration to negotiate with the county towards completing a project cost-sharing partnership agreement based on the memo ratios for sanitary volumes.
Thank you. Discussion or debate? All in favor? And that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Seven point seven, Blackfalds Transit Service on Demand Contract Service Review.
Thank you, Worship Council. So it's been a long time coming here. I really appreciate all the efforts that the service provider has done over the last 3 or 4 years. The service provider is actually here tonight, so I've got Jonathan Wheel here as well as Carrie Kentworthy. They represent Prairie Bus Services as well as Southland. So they're here tonight in case you guys have any specific questions or anything, and also just to see what's the outcome here on the future of the Blackfalds Transit Service. So council was able to authorize administration to move forward with a 3rd year of a pilot program that started 3 years ago. And so this pilot program is planned to cease on August 31st of this year, unless council so wishes to move forward with the service further. So the biggest, I guess, change that we've done over the last 6 months was we've added a regional stop 2 at the Eagle Builders Center in the Asplin Industrial Area, so the Lacombe County. And then our biggest new producer is at the Red Deer Polytechnic, so that's on the west side of the city of Red Deer. That also gives our riders the ability to link into the Red Deer Transit on the west side. So our current contract for on-demand transit services is provided by Prairie Bus Lines. They have been contracted to manage the application, call center, the van routes, the drivers, as well as maintaining the town-owned vans since we started this service just under 34 months ago. Prairie Bus Lines and their parent company, Pacific Western Transportation, as well as Southland, came highly recommended and are the main provider for on-demand services in central Alberta. They've collaborated with the town of Cochrane to successfully launch and customize the first solely on-demand passenger transit service in Canada, and has since gone on to launch similar services in Okotoks and Calgary. They have also been awarded on-demand services for the city of Edmonton, and Prairie Bus Lines themselves run out of downtown Red Deer. They provide school bus and other transportation solutions servicing central Alberta. They've provided our professional support, and administration wants to thank them for their program service levels daily and all their help in regards to future planning through this contract. So when we talked to them about providing 2024 and 2025 rates, they've graciously provided the rates outlined in year 1 and year 2. We've had a number of months to review Prairie Bus Line service level and their ability to operate and manage this service. We confirm that they have the facilities, equipment, and professional experience to provide local on-demand transit service. And quite frankly, they're the only ones that are doing this on-demand system in central Alberta successfully. With the 2023 budget, we've budgeted a full year of continued use for base service band 1. So that's essentially our 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. hours, Monday to Friday. And going forward with this, we would like to continue on that for a total service hour of 3,389. Really, we've all heard this before, but with transit, local employers can draw on a large service pool of skilled labor forces, which they would normally not have access to. The Bolt service also supports older and younger population to actively move around town without the need for a vehicle or license. The Economic Development Board supports this service, as well as our FCSS department, which recognizes that social support of having a transit service to assist our low-income and underprivileged society to get to their appointments and other events happening in Red Deer are key. So this service continues to grow and develop at a good rate. With the new high school coming on soon, there will be more opportunities for riders to join the Bolt movement. Administration recognizes that long-term commitment by council to continue this one-of-kind service in central Alberta is key. And we've seen recently that the town has been approached by the city of Lacombe to partner on a rural transit grant submission to study the potential of combining their Connect service with our on-demand Bolt service, so that we can both see the benefits of those two options. So if we were to move forward with that feasibility study, we would look at how the Connect service could be routed through Blackfalds so that our Blackfalds residents could utilize that service, and there'd actually be some efficiencies in being able to use their fleet to subsidize our Bolt service and vice versa. So that's something that's just recently come forward, and I think with some of the successes we've had with the Red Deer Poly stop, as well as some of the other northern stops, this commuter service is really, really important to the community. So what we're looking at is the existing contract rate is just under $60 per hour using our van for service. The rate for 2024, they're proposing a 5% increase for the first year, being just under $63 per hour, and a 4% increase for the second year, being $65.50 per hour. These increases are due to gas prices and planned wage inflation increases. And further, these would be covered under our 2023 transit budget with plans to revise both expenses in 2024 and 25 to fully utilize or fully fund the increases. It is of note that the average CPI for April over the year was 6.8%. So this is well below that. I guess with that, what we're looking for is a consistent service level, basically asking for the current contract with Prairie Bus Lines to be extended for a minimum or a maximum yearly cost of $213,500 for 2024 and $221,900 for 2025. And also that council approves the Rural Transit Solution Fund application to study the viability of expanding transit services and partnership in Lacombe and Blackfalds. And of course, I'd welcome any questions, and these guys will answer any questions too that you guys might have.
Councillor Stendy.
Do we anticipate that if we went ahead with the application for the Rural Transit Solutions Fund, that it would cover 100% of the viability of the expanded service?
Through the chair, I believe that it's 100% to do the feasibility study.
That's
so
what I was asking.
We could actually hire a consultant to work with the two communities to move forward with the feasibility study and see what drives and what wouldn't in our two programs.
Okay, so that consultant would be paid for through this.
Correct.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Councillor Pell.
Thanks. That was very much along the lines of one of my questions as well, Councillor Stendy. So thank you. Yeah, I would certainly only be in favor of that second recommendation if we know the grant is going to pay for all of that. Yeah. And my other question would be through the chair to administration. As we are moving forward with our electric charging stations, is there a plan to utilize any grant funding, for example, the Green Municipal Fund, towards the costs of a new vehicle, specifically one that runs on electricity, to utilize these new charging stations?
Excellent question, Councillor. So through the chair, that's definitely something we've been talking to Southland as well as other partners about. Really, if we have a solid understanding that council wants to see this program continue, then we would definitely look at exploring capital as well as other grant submissions, and that green trip funding would be the first one we'd be looking at.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Councillor Schwab.
I'm glad that our service has been growing. And we've partnered with some great companies like Eagle Builders and the Polytechnic in Red Deer. My only question is, with Lacombe backing out on us a long time ago, and I was part of that ad hoc committee, how would we even get a grant if we couldn't partner with them in the first place and them backing out? And how would we know that it would actually work this time, because it didn't last time?
Yeah, excellent questions. So through the chair, I think it would go a long ways if we had a little bit stronger of an agreement with Lacombe County as far as what we're doing and what we're not. And I think that feasibility study would actually focus in on some of those concerns and how we can ensure that our service continues even whether or not our partners are there or not. I guess the other criteria on this is it's a lot more nimble now, or on-demand transit service, and it's not linked to that long route to Lacombe. So there's a lot more ways that we can partner where we're not utilizing some of our time for Blackfalds residents and they're having to go out to Lacombe. We have gotten a number, probably in the neighborhood of 10 inquiries over the last 3 years. Why can't you go to Lacombe, or why can't Lacombe come to Blackfalds, and things like that. So residents of Central Alberta, they don't really care who's operating the service. They just want to know if the bus goes to their house or not. So there's definitely the opportunity for regional collaboration, and I think that would be a strong positive in any of our grant submissions.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Dennis.
Just on the comment on electric buses and whatnot, I know a couple years ago, and I haven't had any update, but I know that a lot of them, they wouldn't even recommend them for a rural route because they need to be charged too often. So you'd end up having to have maybe 2 or 3 in the fleet to accommodate that. But unless things have changed. They haven't changed. No, I didn't think so.
I can comment on that a bit too. So the city of Red Deer, they did get Green Trip funding to retrofit all of their buses to a CNG or compressed natural gas. So that was the way that they went. So there is green options that are better than, say, EVs, and there's versus diesel. And I don't know if you guys have any other.
Yeah, so
You might as well come up and.
yeah, thank you.
This is Jonathan.
Yeah, as Councillor Dennis pointed out, there's no such thing as an electric bus that will last 14 hours in a day. So what happens is that municipalities buy double the number or triple the number of buses that they actually need at a cost that's 3 or 4 times the expense of a diesel vehicle, just so they can say that they're very green. It's not something that I would recommend for certain. There are other options. We're just running the first hydrogen bus in Canada right now. It uses 90% hydrogen and 10% diesel. So that's far greener. And we're also now looking at hydrogen buses that have hydrogen fuel cells in them. So they turn the hydrogen into electricity, which powers the bus. So they don't need to be charged. It just generates. So there's lots of things. It's a lot of people will say now is you don't want to be the city or the town or the municipality that bought the Betamax video player. When you go with those type of buses, right? It's changing so quickly now that my recommendation would be is that you would wait and see for at least another year or so to see what develops with regard to those sort of vehicles.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the question was, there's a lot of initiatives with regards to hydrogen. I think we're in the right area in
Yeah.
Canada to be part of that, since Edmonton is driving that.
Yeah.
Councillor Stendy.
So I'm sure this will come out in the feasibility study, but just for my own curiosity, do we know how many vehicles Connex currently is using?
Yeah, so we've had recent discussions with FCSS, who is a non-for-profit organization, the city of Lacombe. They're not actually associated with the city of Lacombe, but they fund them like you guys fund the library sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they have apparently one van that's similar to our van, and then they have 2 15-passenger handy-capable buses. And those actually run a service to the Red Deer Hospital and back. So that's a little bit more of an AHS type service that we don't currently offer. And they're basically driving right past us. So there's definitely that ability for us to maybe deal with some of the growing pains we might have in the next couple of years if we can utilize their service. And then they're essentially on a dial-a-bus with administrative support type of a program. So they're looking towards, the app and that sort of connectivity. And just, really high level, if we were looking at how we could integrate those two services, if you were looking up the app, there'd almost be one that would be like, your normal Bolt service, and there'd be one that's more linked towards palliative care and limited accessibility and that type of thing, which we don't really have a demand right now for, but there's lots of people that are getting older and getting less able to use accessible services. And if we can provide that, then there's definitely that demographic that can move here and feel more comfortable living here. So that's kind of the way we've kind of had some initial discussions on it. But obviously there'd be this whole feasibility study of who gets priority and how that whole thing would be and how we could partner to get more infrastructure, more fleet in place, and even some infrastructure along the lines of shared bus stops or Red Deer connections, that sort of thing.
That's really interesting and good to know. I think that Even outside of like geriatrics, we have a lot of people in our community who utilize the Red Deer Hospital for day surgery and have to arrange to have a ride to come and pick them up after the fact. So I don't think it's necessarily limited to our senior population. And I think that it would definitely be an addition to Blackfalds should we decide to go that route in the future. So thank you for the answer to that.
You're welcome.
So I know that when Blackfalds and Lacombe and Red Deer entered into the original Bolt agreement, I think had it not been for a pretty substantial grant, that wouldn't have been feasible at all for that. And it was ambitious. I think we stood out in Alberta of having a service like that, and it was kind of challenging to watch the empty bus go by over and over and over again. So I mean, I really I'm grateful that that Blackfalds past council, this council has supported the Bolt in the on-demand service because it's unique. I can tell you the conferences I've gone to that make references to transit and show the numbers. It's pretty nice to see Blackfalds listed amongst the very few municipalities in Alberta that has a transit service. I think it was 15. It's less than 20. I'm almost certain of it. And to see a municipality our size be able to offer that and kind of add in some depth in this, I think that's going to help us along the way when it comes to housing, because a lot of the housing grants are tied into transit. So we haven't necessarily factored that in. Maybe that'll be factored in the study. And I suspect that Lacombe is probably considering that. I also was very suspicious when I heard that Lacombe wanted to start negotiating. But I think that comes back to the fact that they didn't think out of the box. They saw this transit service. We got this big grant to buy a bus. It seemed like a great thing that they could offer their residents. It was not viable. It was not utilized very well. And they're seeing Blackfalds service grow, and their residents seeing this bus that they wish they had access to. So we bit the bullet, and we maintain this service. And it's a huge cost. I know big cities, next to policing, it's the biggest cost. You know, you look at Toronto, that's massive. That's probably what their election was all about, was transit. So for us to hold on to that was a big cost. But I suspect that it'll pay dividends when we go to apply for some housing grants in the future, which I hope we will, because there's a lot of money available for that. And we get preference because we have transit, and that's a huge factor. Affordable housing tied into transit is one of the main criteria for the Rapid Housing Initiative, for example. So I think in the long run, we may end up being well rewarded for maintaining that service if we get a couple $1 million in terms of grants for housing for our residents, as well as maintaining a service that we would strand a lot of residents, I think, at this point if we were to back out of that service. And so I'm happy that we have. I know it's expensive. As I said, the bigger cities are struggling with that just as much as the small municipalities, but there are some other factors that help us rationalize that, and grants for housing would be one that I think is a big one that we might not have considered in that expenditure. So I'm happy that we're kind of leaders in that in the province. So thank you for helping us maintain that and for keeping it as affordable as possible. I appreciate that Prairie Bus Lines has also supported it in terms of utilizing other vehicles whenever that is needed. I don't think it would be viable if we didn't have that partnership. So we're fortunate in that respect. All right, any other comments, questions before we consider these motions? Seeing none, we do have two recommended. Councillor Schwab?
You know, I'm so glad the last couple of years we've had the data to show our residents how well we're growing the service. It's unique to our community, and we can grow it the way we want to grow it. And that is why I'm going to move the first recommendation that council authorize administration to extend the current contract with Prairie Bus Lines LTD for the provision of the transit operations and maintenance. Base service band 1 operating on weekdays for a total of 3,389 service hours for a maximum yearly cost of $213,338 for 2024 and $221,871 for 2025.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Second motion. Councillor Coulter.
Excuse me, I move that council approves the Rural Transit Solution Fund application to study the availability of expanding the transit service in Lacombe and Blackfalds.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? Unanimous carried. Moving on to action correspondence 8.1, the Bowden Daze Parade invitation for July 15th. I know we'd be skipping ahead, but just because Councillor Schwab added 8.3, that is the same day as Lacombe Parade, just as a factor. I know that probably I would attend the Lacombe Parade. And it's open to anyone, so I wouldn't be available for Bowden. Anyone interested? Doesn't look like it. Well, we can. Oh, Deputy Mayor Dennis.
Jim said that he would go to
Okay,
any that no one else would want to go to.
so we'll give Councillor Sands the option. He attended that one, I believe, last year. He seems to be our go-to parade marshal for Blackfalds. So we'll leave that open. I'll let him respond. 8.2, the Bentley Fair and Rodeo Parade on August 10. I've attended that one once before. It's short and sweet, that one. Councillor Coulter?
I'd be interested in doing it. I just have to confirm on what's around that date.
Okay. Seeing
So
no
a
one,
possibility.
okay, so seeing no one else that's expressing interest, we'll let you confirm that. We won't adopt that as a motion at this point.
Thank you.
And 8.3, Lacombe Parade. So we don't have the invitation in front of us. Councillor Schwab?
I would love to attend. I've gone the last 2 years with my daughter and we have a great time and she loves giving out the candy to the kids. And it starts, I believe, at 7:30 at the invitation. So the mayor's breakfast is from 7:30 to 8:30. And I believe the parade starts around 10. So, yeah, the 15th.
Okay, thank you. So we'll have an, unless there's anyone else, I'll likely also RSVP to that one. Enter into the minutes that Councillor Schwab and myself will each you're gonna RSVP for yourself?
Yeah.
Do we need motions since we don't have commitment other than so far for the 8.3? We have a possible Councillor Sands for Bowden. We have possible Councillor Coulter for Bentley, and we have I guess a commitment from Councillor Schwab and myself. We can make one motion for that, or do you want separate motions? Let's make separate motions, just, okay. So for 8.1 Bowden, we have no commitment, so I guess there's no motion for that. Neither Councillor Coulter, you're gonna confirm, so we won't commit you to this with the motion. So 8.3, can we get a motion to accept Councillor Schwab and myself for Lacombe on the 15th? Deputy Mayor Dennis.
I so move.
Thank you. All in favor? Moving on to information items, 9.1, rec board minutes for April 5th, amended. No, previously that was under adoption of minutes without names, right? In the last meeting. That would normally be under adoption of minutes, not an information item. So we can accept those under information, just, okay. So we're just acknowledging that they've been amended? I thought that we pushed them forward. Thank you for that clarification. 9.2, special events permit for the Little of This Market on September 23rd, 24th. .3 Highway 2A and South Street intersection STIP funding letter. Councilor Pell.
Thank you. Through to administration. So as we've requested for this grant funding for, I'll say several years in a
Mhm.
row now, my question is there something we can do to either spruce up the proposal a bit, or are there items we need to change that we're asking for? What do we need to do to make this more exciting so we get a grant?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Director Warren has stepped out, and he was the one to answer this. But definitely, we'll look at the questions why we weren't successful
There he is.
this year, and he
The
could
man of the
possibly
minute.
speak on why we weren't successful. However, yeah, we have been applying, as you just stated, the STIP grant for a number of years. However, we need to work out why we're not proceeding.
Yeah, so the STIP fund, we've applied for it. I believe this is the 4th year. And really it comes down to the department saying there's other priorities. And when it comes to a improvement to a local highway that's based off of access on and off of the highway, the department has a hard time putting money towards that. So there's a lot of other priorities, and that's where we've been sitting for the last 4 years.
Thank you. 9.4, the email from Alberta Muni's President Cathy Heron. Just to add on, these were presented at the Summer Leaders Caucus, and they did receive out of those 4, I believe they had 4 different Leaders Caucus in different municipalities. They did collect some additional recommendations, questions that will likely amend this. And so this will be followed up at the AGM and conference in the fall. A 9.6 letter from Minister McIver, our Minister of Municipal Affairs again. In my experience so far, that seems to be the most accessible Minister of Municipal Affairs. Shows up at a number of functions that I've been to. So good to see him back again. Brings a lot of experience. Has also had experience in municipal government. So compared to some of them that came from other ministries and had absolutely none. 9.7, City of Lacombe highlights from June 12th. And 9.8, County of Lacombe highlights from June 8th. Comments, questions? Looking for a motion to accept information items for information. Councillor Coulter.
I move that we accept information items as information.
Thank you. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Moving into roundtable. We'll start with Councillor Coulter and work our way to the right.
I do not have anything to add. Anybody wants more information, I can supply it after.
Thank you. Councillor Schwab.
If I had a voice, I would talk about the AAPG conference, but my voice has been going on like this for almost 2 weeks. So if anybody wants to reach out to me about the AAPG conference, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Pell.
Thank you so much. Yeah, nothing additional to add. I did try to document the different workshops and plenaries and events that were attended at FCM in Toronto in May. So if anyone has any questions, I do have most of the workshops that I attended. I have the slides for and all of that information if anyone's interested. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Dennis.
Mine was pretty quiet, but if there's any questions.
Councillor Stendy.
I have no additions.
Thank you. And for me, yeah, it was a busy month, but that was mostly because of FCM that I attended with Councillor Appel and Councillor Sands. And as you can see, a little more detail in Councillor Appel's in terms of some of the sessions that are there. We've had some good success with our healthcare attraction and retention committee. We celebrated the Recognized Rural Health Week by delivering baskets, and it was nice to see a lot of our different healthcare providers in the community. I was surprised. There's more than I've experienced, and they were very, very pleased to get some recognition. And I said, in general, with that committee, we're seeing some traction. I know that we've got at least 3 new physicians that have come to Blackfalds since that committee was formed. So clearly, that was a success. Yeah, anybody has questions, they can direct them to me afterwards. As Councillor Appel indicated, FCM is a very busy time. A lot of things are discussed in that we don't necessarily consider as a council. So, and the next year it'll be even better with all the council being able to attend it in Calgary. So looking forward to that. With that, can I get a motion to accept Roundtable's information? Deputy Mayor Dennis.
I so move.
Thank you. All in favor? That is unanimous. So we do have adoption of minutes, 11.1 minutes from the regular council meeting on June 13th. Any errors, omissions noted? Motion to adopt those if there are no amendments. Councillor Coulter.
I move to adopt the minutes of June 13th, regular council meeting.
Thank you. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. And 11.2 minutes from the standing committee meeting on June 19th. Councillor Appel.
Thank you. I move to accept the minutes as presented for the standing committee meeting Monday, June 19th.
Thank you. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. We do have a notice of motion, 12.1 notice of motion to rescind motion 187/23. Councillor Appel. Or Councillor Stendy.
So I'm asking council for the opportunity to grant me permission to rescind my motion made at the June 13th, 2023 regular council meeting, which read as follows, 187.23, that I, Councillor Stendy, moved that council accept, the 2022 social needs assessment as information. Reason being, this motion was made by myself to accept the 2022 needs assessment as information only, which I believed I made myself quite clear in my discussion prior to making said motion. It has since been brought to my attention that there was confusion about the intention of the motion, and I have been advised that the administration intends to use this motion to set a precedent and act on the recommendations in the report. This was not the intention of my motion, And as such, I would like to rescind the motion made at the June 13th, 2023 regular council meeting. The following motion will be brought forward to the July 11th, 2023 meeting. The council move to rescind motion 187/23. The council move to accept the 2022 social needs assessment as information.
Thank you. So that'll come back in July. Thank you. No business I see no business for the good of council on the agenda. Anything to add? Seeing none, that ends our, oh, sorry, we do have Councillor Spaulding.
Sorry, I have a question because I totally have forgotten to ask this at the previous meeting. We have our new MLA, Jennifer Johnson, but we've never congratulated her with a letter. And we usually do that when we have elections. So I'm wondering if we are able to add that or do a letter for her, as well as we usually ask for a meeting with all of council to be able to ask questions and give her an idea of what her community is like.
Thank you. Yeah, I suspect that's a good idea. We most municipalities do. I did a conversation with our new MLA, and she did indicate that she would like to attend a council meeting as a delegation, but that doesn't stop us from sending congratulations. So that was not on the agenda, but unless there's objections from the rest of council, we could certainly add that go back and add that as a business item. So would you like to make that a motion?
I sure would.
Okay, the motion. Okay, so. Okay. So that informal request would not be part of this agenda then? We can certainly entertain that at our next meeting. I don't think she's going anywhere anytime soon. So we'll bring it up on the next agenda then. Thank you. Clearly, we have support for it. All right, seeing no other business of council in the open session, we will take a recess for 5 minutes. Don't need a motion for that, apparently. Deputy Mayor Dennis?
I move that we take a 5-minute recess starting now.
Okay, all in favor? Taking it.